J.K. Rowling used an old Olympia typewriter to finish the very first Harry Potter novel back in 1995, and in the 2 years after Rowling wrote the original manuscript, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was rejected by 12 different publishers. It wasn't until 1997 when the book was picked up by Bloomsbury and became a hit in the UK, and just a year after that, Scholastic Press bought the rights to publish it in the United States in 1998. Scholastic also omitted the word philosopher from the title, changing it to Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. However, the move to the United States also paved the way for Warner Brothers to acquire the film rights to Harry Potter in 1999. A purchase that reportedly cost £1 million. This was the largest that Warner Brothers had spent on purchasing the film rights for any children's book, so the amount caused a stir among studio execs. Little did they know that the Harry Potter series would go on to sell 600 million books, get translated into over 80 languages, and result in an 11-film franchise that had collectively grossed $9.7 billion in theaters worldwide. And while the box office figures are astounding, the rise of the Harry Potter franchise is really defined by its sheer cultural impact. As the first producers who read Rowling's debut novel had noted, it's much more than just a book for kids, and indeed, when the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone came out in 2001, it forever changed the face of contemporary children's fantasy. At the time, the film's setting of a school of magic for children set it apart from other expansive and emerging fantasy franchises. And in fleshing out the secrets of Hogwarts, the Wizarding World, and the dark prophecy that befalls it, the world building in the first film appeals to both children and longtime adult fantasy audiences alike. Notably, this first year at Hogwarts served as the beginning of the stellar movie careers of the then unknown child actors Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson. And let's not forget the early controversy that surrounded the first film. After it came out in theaters, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was protested by religious groups for its depictions of witchcraft, and this even led to the book burnings of J.K. Rowling's work. Now practically a tradition that's even continued in recent years. However, just like with most other franchises that have courted similar controversies, this religious fervor only fueled the rise of Harry Potter as a global cultural phenomenon. To date, the first film has earned a lifetime gross of $1.2 billion, or a little over 8 times its budget of $125 million. And even today, many Potterheads swear that Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone still remains the greatest movie in the original 8-film series. The golden years of the franchise continues in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, which was released in 2002, and was just as successful as the first movie. And while this is where things start getting darker, the sequel improves on nearly every aspect of the original. Meanwhile, from the improved Quidditch scenes to Harry finally dueling with Draco, the action is also much more fun and epic this time round. Conversely, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets has been criticized for looking and feeling too much like its predecessor, and in truth, the first 2 films are similar enough for certain scenes to even be interchangeable. That being said, even this only helped establish continuity in the franchise. Besides, the first 2 Harry Potter films were both directed by one man, Chris Columbus, who only bowed out after the second movie, but who took over after Columbus, and why did this result in a very different third film? This is when the Harry Potter film series truly undergoes its most drastic changes. The franchise's first radical tone shift can be attributed to Alfonso Cuarón, the director of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which hit theaters back in 2004. The director of films such as Roma and Children of Men, Cuarón's most noticeable contribution to the franchise is the sudden improvement in cinematography. So while everything got much darker, grittier, and far more terrifying, Prisoner of Azkaban also features some of the most gorgeous shots in the entire series. In this movie, the air is decidedly thick with magic. Now, Prisoner of Azkaban sets the tone for much of the rest of the Harry Potter franchise, and it remains a valid contender for being the best movie in the entire original series. Unfortunately, this can't really be said for the sequel to Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. From there, the franchise struggled to maintain high standards of filmmaking in the last 5 films. In fact, to many viewers, the fall of the Harry Potter franchise began in the 2005 sequel, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. While the previous films have cut out parts of the source material before, Goblet of Fire is notorious for omitting key details and even altering relationships that left book readers pretty confused. From the changes to the Triwizard Tournament and the foreign magic schools to the watered-down character arc of Barty Crouch Jr., the fourth movie is considered by many to be the worst adaptation of what is otherwise a pretty great novel. Even the debut of characters like Mad-Eye Moody and Lord Voldemort couldn't save what feels like a hodgepodge of beats from the source material. Okay, so Order of the Phoenix actually faced the same problem as Goblet of Fire. The book is too long and dense to fit the standard length of a feature film. But while Order of the Phoenix also elected to omit crucial details from the book, the fifth Harry Potter movie left just enough for the overarching narrative to stay intact and entertaining all throughout. For instance, although essential bits like the Rita Skeeter interview were scrapped to fit the entire plot into one movie, Order of the Phoenix very successfully debuts arguably an even better villain than Voldemort, the despicable and genuinely terrifying Dolores Umbridge. And let's not forget that this is when the long-awaited Dumbledore versus Voldemort duel finally goes down. However, after Order of the Phoenix redeemed the franchise from Goblet of Fire, the next and sixth movie struggles to keep the momentum going. Indeed, 2009's Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince is considered by many to be the worst of the entire original series. And we kinda agree. Now, don't get us wrong, the whole Ginny and Harry rom-com part was a fun, touching detour that helped balance the increasingly dark plot development. And at the same time, however, even the exciting parts of what is otherwise an overly morose film turn out to be kind of unnecessary. Case in point, apart from not being in the books, the burning down of the Weasley family home didn't just make zero sense, it also didn't have any real consequences, as the home was soon rebuilt before hosting an actual wedding. Also, the movie never goes into explaining the short-lived careers of Hogwarts' defense against the dark arts teacher, which the source material dives into in great detail. And perhaps most importantly, the same goes for the entire backstory of Lord Voldemort, which also fails to factor into the sixth movie. Fortunately, however, things would pick up again in the last two movies in the series. Respectively released in 2010 and 2011, with a mere 8 months in between, Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2 famously ended the saga without straying too wildly from the source material. It certainly helped that, unlike in the first 6 movies, the movie was split into 2 movies this time around. So while director David Yates struggled to adapt the books in the previous 2 films, he was afforded the necessary breathing room to properly flesh out Deathly Hallows. From the animated story of the Deathly Hallows to the epilogue showing Harry, Hermione, and Ron ushering their kids into Hogwarts Express, the last films provide a satisfying conclusion to the decade-long blockbuster saga. Moreover, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 is actually the single most successful film in the franchise, grossing a record-breaking $1.3 billion in the box office. And while Part 1 came out to mixed reviews, Part 2 is regarded by many to be the best film out of the original 8. By 2011, the Harry Potter franchise was at the peak of its critical and commercial success. So, what happened to the most successful fantasy franchise of the noughties? Well, the beginning of the end of the Harry Potter film franchise happened in 2016, the year Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them was released. Ultimately, the prequel films simply failed to capture the charm of the original Harry Potter series, which became more apparent with each Fantastic Beasts movie. So while Fantastic Beasts 1 grossed a still impressive $811 million in theaters, Fantastic Beasts 2 barely broke even by grossing $648 million versus a $200 million budget. And Fantastic Beasts 3 actually lost money by grossing just around $407 million worldwide. Notably, this failure wasn't just due to the decrease in quality of the films. Indeed, the adventures of Newt are scarcely comparable to that of heroes like Harry Potter, Dumbledore, and Severus Snape. However, the real problem lies with the overarching villain of the prequels, the renowned dark wizard Grindelwald. Trigger warning, the next part of this video discusses domestic abuse and gender-based violence. In the second movie, The Crimes of Grindelwald, the aspiring Dark Lord took a much more central role. However, the movie was also released in 2018, the same year when Johnny Depp, who played Grindelwald, also faced allegations of domestic abuse from his ex-wife Amber Heard. Moreover, 2 years later, J.K. Rowling herself became the subject of controversy in 2020 when she made online statements that have been interpreted as being transphobic. Combined, these controversies compelled viewers to scrutinize not just the Fantastic Beasts prequels, but the original films as well. And this brought to light questionable elements from the movies that previously went unnoticed by most audiences, such as the underdeveloped characters played by people of color, the lack of queer representation, and the outright homophobic and transphobic elements from the original series. Even Rowling's previous retroactive changes were put under a critical microscope, and justifyingly so. With the franchise openly starring an accused wife-beater, Rowling retroactively making Dumbledore gay felt more like virtue signaling than a genuine attempt at representation. So by 2022, the year when Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore was released, the Harry Potter fan base itself was pretty divided, and even recasting Grindelwald with Mads Mikkelsen didn't suffice to save the third movie in what was initially a 5-film expansion plan. So is there still hope left for the Harry Potter franchise? Despite the live-action films completely falling off the rails by 2022, the franchise is far from dead. For starters, the Tony Award-winning stage play Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which premiered in 2016, still has ongoing shows in London and other parts of the world. Most notably, however, the original saga is getting rebooted as an animated series on HBO Max, and the idea is actually quite promising, as the animation automatically distinguishes the reboot from the first live-action films. Moreover, the series format is also more suited for fleshing out the saga's dense narrative, though the upcoming Harry Potter show could actually be a more faithful adaptation of the books compared to the original 8 films. But what do you think? Do you see any hope left for the Harry Potter franchise? Which parts of the story do you think can be improved in the animated HBO series? Tell us your thoughts in the comments and keep watching ScreenRant.